Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's presentation, Going Beyond the Five Senses to Heal. I am so excited and happy to have with us today Kara Goodwin. Kara is a meditation expert. She's a coach, and she's the host of the Meditation Conversation podcast. Kara's mission is to help people connect deeper with who they truly are underneath who they think they are supposed to be so that they can experience wholeness in body, mind, and soul. Welcome, Kara.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to be here, Teresa. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. When we came together, I just knew that we were going to have to do a presentation on your expertise with meditation. And I so love your mission. As you and I were discussing right before we went live, we have a similar mission, and that is to open people up to who they are, who they truly are at their core. So I feel like you're my soul sister.
That's right. Yes, likewise.
Yeah, my soul sister in our mission to help heal this planet. And I think we can agree that right now the planet needs a lot of healing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just dive right into your expertise. And so I know so many people think that meditation has to do with sitting in the lotus position and trying to empty your head, which is nearly impossible, right? Could you give us a better definition of what meditation really is?
Yes, thank you for that because I was just talking about this yesterday with a client of mine too, where people have this expectation that they need to be a certain way to even approach meditation. So they may think, I've heard this so many times, I can't meditate because my mind's all over the place, or I can't sit still, or I can't, all these self-limiting things that we tell ourselves about who we think we are. And I don't know that anybody would come to meditation if they already were able to really enter into a state of calmness and peace in one breath, who could just immediately calm themselves down. Like, why do you need it if you're already in this Zen state naturally? Bless you if that is the case, because you've found the key to something, or you've been gifted something in this life that a lot of people are struggling with. Meditation is a wonderful tool for people who are experiencing anxiety or restlessness, or feeling overwhelmed. It's not that you have to have already overcome those sorts of things in order to meditate. It's like a vehicle to help you get beyond those things. And you don't even have to sit on the floor. Like you say, people expect that they have to be able to sit in the lotus position for a half an hour or an hour to really get the benefits. There are scientific studies that have measured within the brain the thickening of the prefrontal cortex here in the front of the brain, which is the most evolved part of the brain, that with as little as 8 weeks of meditation practice for 12 to 15 minutes a day, that there is a change, a thickening in the prefrontal cortex. And that's important because through the prefrontal cortex, this is where, if you were going to have an MRI scan your brain while there are, different scenarios that you're being thrown at, if you are feeling peace, if you're feeling joy, if you're tapping into your creativity, if you're feeling altruistic, if you're feeling connected, your prefrontal cortex is active. So if those types of things are evading you in your daily life and you're a stranger to those, maybe you have memories of when, you were a child and you felt more joyful, but now, joy is something for children, as an example, then, your prefrontal cortex may not be very active. So we can have these changes. We don't have to have this super long practice. It does take a dedicated practice. It that daily practice is key, because it's not a one and done. It's not like, oh, I
Right,
meditated that one time, now where are my gifts?
right, right.
Where's my increased intuition or whatever it is, my peace and my joy. um, it is like that dedicated practice, just like if you were to go to a gym because you wanted to strengthen your arms. You
Right.
can have an amazing session at a gym and feel sore the next day, feel those benefits or the results of that the next day, but it's really not going to change you with one experience. It's that continuous dedication to a practice. But again, it doesn't have to be a super long practice. Just, aiming for 15 minutes is huge. That's a big win.
Yeah. So let's, for those who don't have a correct concept of what it's like to meditate, how about we talk about a few of the different ways that someone could pull this off? So we just talked about it's not a matter of sitting in the lotus position. And I know even for me, and I practiced yoga for years, but it is uncomfortable for me to sit on the floor and try to keep my back straight. So I choose to meditate in a chair where I have support for my back.
Mm-hmm.
But I think people could do walking meditations. And so could you just give us an overview of the different ways to meditate?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can definitely sit in a chair. I have a course, a 21-day meditation immersion self-study course, and we do talk about some of this stuff where it's like posture, because there are these misconceptions that if you're going to do it properly, you have to sit down, you have to be in the lotus, as you already said. But you definitely, I have a lot of students in classes that I teach who like to go and they want to be on the floor. They do like to be on the floor, but I have chairs and there's no shame in going in a chair. Absolutely. But a lot of people they find this comfort zone in betweeny kind of thing where they sit against the wall. So they're on the floor on a cushion, but they're leaning back against the floor or against the wall, and that seems to be a nice balance for them. But sitting on a chair is really, I mean, there's actually an advantage to sitting on the chair where it kind of sets you up to be able to take meditation with you, so that oh well, I'm used to sitting on a chair, so I could meditate before a flight because I'm in a chair, and it might be something that
Ah,
kind of kicks in. Or there's a park bench. I may not necessarily think to meditate because I see a bench, but if that's your kind of go-to posture, then it might open some things up. Um, as you mentioned, there are things like walking meditations. If really it is difficult to move, um, because the whole point of meditation has different meanings. Meditation is a thing and it's an act. So we can sit down to meditate, and it could be possible to never really enter a meditative state, because we haven't actually closed, or not closed the brain down, but um, opened ourselves up and settled our thoughts down. So we may still have a lot of churn and agitation, um, and not really hit a meditative state. And that just some meditations are like that, even if you've been practicing for a long time. So, there does come a point where it gets easier to enter into a meditative state, but that doesn't mean that it's a fail safe, so it's like, just give yourself compassion. Like, compassion, acceptance is a huge thing with meditation. But if we want to do, like, I have a friend who's a musician, and for her, entering into this free flow through her guitar gets her into a meditative state because she's so adept at it that she doesn't have to really think about it. And she feels this flow, like she can feel that she's entered into a flow where like the music is moving through her and she's kind of connecting to the sound. And so she's moving, She's not, she's engaging her brain in a way, in a different way than you might if you were just sitting there, and really going into a meditative state. But it really is about getting into this state where we're going beyond thought. And so even right now, if somebody who is watching just takes a moment and notices, like, just, you can close your eyes and you can just notice the thoughts. So rather than actually, for now, trying to shift out of thinking, just noticing the thoughts that come up. And when you notice the thoughts, you can notice that you are not the thoughts.
Mhm.
So who is witnessing these thoughts? And that is where you start to experience a little bit about what a meditation is about. It's kind of connecting to this part of you that's beyond the thinking mind, and it's beyond the body. It's beyond your emotional experience. And it is like, what is the witness to all of these aspects of who I am as a person that are kind of moving through time with me, but who is it doesn't change? The physical body continues to change. Our emotions are continuously changing. Our thoughts, oh my goodness. For most of us, the thoughts are like, a lot of times they're cycling, we keep coming back to the same thoughts, same things we're telling ourselves. But there is something that's witnessing and animating all of that. And so that is really what starts to strengthen. At least for me, that has been like a huge shift that I've gotten through meditation, is understanding myself in a different way, and really connecting with that witness, and with that part of me that's eternal, that this temporary form is an expression of. I hope that
Yeah, well, you covered a lot of things, and
yeah.
I'm sure there was a nugget for everyone that's listening. But I'd like to go back to your friend who plays the guitar, and that kind of leads her right into her meditation, because a lot of people, it's helpful for some people. I'm going to rephrase what I just said. It's helpful for some people to have a sound to focus on, whether
Mhm.
it be drumming. Shamanic drumming is completely different than meditation, but there is so much meditation music out there. And so, because I recommend meditation for my clients who are trying to heal, and
Mhm.
that's what we're here to talk about today, going on five senses to heal. So oftentimes a sound, even a dripping faucet, or a running air conditioner, anything that you can direct your focus on, can help you step away from that chronic monkey mind that so many of us suffer from. And so, I saw an article um, come out just recently about, and I'm going a little off topic here, but I think you'll appreciate it,
Mhm.
about there's now scientific proof that sound can heal. Well, the Tibetans have been using healing sound bowls for
Yes.
thousands of years, right? But
Correct.
now we have scientific proof that it works. But we also have scientific proof that meditation works as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're in a new age, and so we all know we have our five senses that we rely on. Most of us rely on every day, and we actually take those five senses for granted. Some of us, right?
Mhm.
And I have spoken to several people who had been through COVID. They contracted COVID, and they said the worst part of all was waiting for my sense of taste to return.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, yeah. So it's not until you lose it that you're like, wow, I really enjoyed my sense of taste.
Yeah, right.
So, so in keeping with our topic, going beyond the five senses to heal, how can meditation help us do that?
So this goes back to a little bit about what I was just talking about, where we're getting in touch with that witness, because that is this like animating factor. It's like this, we can't experience that part of ourselves through the senses. It's behind it, or beyond it, or however. I mean, because sometimes with meditation we can feel directed to go like outside of the body. There's like transcendental meditation, or TM, for example, which, I have had transcendental experiences and they are incredible. So nothing, I'm not taking an aim at TM by any means, but I want to correct this feeling that meditation is something where we go beyond our human experience, or that the human experience is something that needs to be transcended, that we need to go beyond. Again, there are beautiful gifts in doing that, in experiencing that, and experiencing ourselves in a much, much bigger way. But we're here, and we're in bodies, and we have emotions, and we have this human experience, and we're here on this planet interacting with other humans. So to me, it's more beneficial to bring in and strengthen that part of me that is beyond the human experience, but bring it in and express it through this human experience, if that makes sense. So again, it's like, I'm not necessarily going to get that experience I'm not going to be able to connect as deeply with that part of me through my sense of taste or through my sight. Really, a lot of it for me is like sight. There's a lot of like, seeing is believing. Like, I've got to see it with my physical eyes in order to believe it. And I still teeter on this, to be honest. Like, this is still something that, like, I value my senses so much. And it was hard for me to engage more with my imagination, and kind of in meditation, and kind of accept things that I couldn't explain through the senses as being real. Because in meditation, at a certain point, you might start seeing light, for example, behind closed eyes, seeing light or seeing color. I have a client who's just started seeing color in her meditations, and she's so excited. And it's this beautiful experience where she can't wait at the end of a meditation to tell us, if she saw purple or whatever.
I
And
love it.
it's
Yeah.
gorgeous, because what an amazing experience. But that, you're seeing that behind closed eyes, so it's beyond your senses. And then there's a part of us that can be like, well, it must not be real, right? Because it's not physical. And so maybe I imagined it. Like, that's so common that we're like, maybe I imagined it. And of course, sometimes we do. Sometimes it really is just like a flash that we got that was a memory, or whatever. But often, that imagination is going to be a gateway. If we stop just saying no to like, our acceptance and our willingness to say yes is huge. Because if we go to any experience that is starting to go beyond the senses, like a healing session, for example, we're looking at a holistic healing kind of thing. The physical world is not going to really, it's going to be a very limiting way to experience that. And then we've got all the different ways that our own beliefs, if we allow them to be limiting, do indeed limit us.
Yes.
So it's like, this openness and this playfulness and this allowance is so important. And with that, imagination does play a role there. Again, not to pretend and not to like trick ourselves, but as a gateway to like learn more, and to just be like, okay, just I'll experience a little bit more and feel into it and see and discern, like, does this feel like it's the right thing for me, or however we can use it in a million different ways. Um, but that's to me kind of what's really at the heart of what we can discover through meditation, what we can discover about ourselves, and just how it's practical, how it's usable in our own journeys of healing beyond the five senses.
So, based on what you described about yourself, it sounds to me like you may have been a little left brain before you stepped in over to this. Would that be about right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you needed to see it to believe it, right?
Yeah.
And Dr. Wayne Dyer, who I think the late Dr. Wayne Dyer, who I think many people are familiar with, he wrote a book that said the title was "When You Believe It, You'll See It."
Oh, yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So yeah, and just in listening to you and based upon the kind of work that I do with my clients, I'm looking at you going, Kara was left brained.
Yes.
And then she
Yeah.
stepped over into this right brain thing.
Yeah.
I also find that that when we are seeking answers, all right, so for example, in my practice, every physical condition has an emotional root, and maybe we don't know what this physical condition is trying to communicate to us. And that silence, that quiet time allows or opens up an opportunity for those answers to arise. And so I think that is an extra plus that meditation can provide. I know for me, great insights, great strokes of inspiration. I mean, I've had instances where I'm just sitting there in meditation, attempting to let the thoughts flow through, right? Because we want to acknowledge them and allow them we don't want to try to stop them because that's nearly impossible. And then all of a sudden this genius thought will come in. And I've had a couple of times where I've bolted out of my chair to go write it down because it was like, oh my gosh, that's like brilliant, so
Yeah.
so I think that quiet time can provide answers that we're seeking, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. It's and I love that because
Yeah.
it sounds like it was that inspiration that was kind of rising to the surface and you were just giving it time to be able to reveal itself. And then it's like, and I've had that too, where I'm like, oh, yes, of course, oh, that's, either that's the answer, um, that's the guidance that I need. That's the idea that I didn't know I wanted,
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, that stillness really is conducive to being able to receive that kind of stuff for sure.
Mm-hmm. So, what would you say to someone who says, I'll never be able to meditate? I simply cannot sit still. What would you say to that person?
Well, there are a few things that come to mind. One thing is the self-talk that we do tell ourselves that we accept before we've even tried something. Um, so there's already this limitation that they're putting around themselves that I'm sure is showing up in other areas of their lives too, where they're defining themselves and they don't have the experience yet to know, because a lot of times, I mean, it comes down to what people think meditation is as well, where they think they have to sit there and be quiet. When I lead a meditation, we have phases to each meditation. You're being guided. I'm telling you to pay attention to different things. Sometimes we're using sound. I mean, so many times I do a meditation with people who are not familiar with meditation, and we'll do a 20-minute meditation and they'll be like, how long was that? And I'll be like, oh, about 20 minutes. And they'll be like, no, I thought it was like 5. And so
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's always very interesting. But really, if there is like an overarching restlessness, then starting with some sort of moving meditation may be a gateway. Um, but also watching the caffeine intake, the sugar intake, that restlessness and that inability to be still, probably there are factors of things that you're bringing into your life that are negatively impacting you. And this is just one window of like, oh, wait, there's something that needs attention here, like diet that, is keeping you agitated. It's keeping you at this state where it's going to be really hard for you to be able to connect with that deeper part of yourself through meditation or through anything else. You're
Yeah.
keeping yourself
Agreed.
very confined.
Yeah. Agreed. Um, and it's so important. It's even more important in today's world because we're living in very, very stressful times. And we have all of our electronic devices that ping us constantly. I have made a personal choice to shut those pings off. I'll decide when I connect with that particular app to see what's going on. It's not life threatening. If it
Mhm.
were, I'd keep the ping on, right? But
Yeah.
it's this constant pinging that I it's my personal opinion, increases the anxiety level of the general public. I also learned from another, professional that I was hosting, that the the pings that come across on our mobile devices are at the same frequency as stress related noises. So not
Oh,
only are you getting
interesting.
pinged, but it's this frequency that
It's
is
on
telling your
alert.
brain, I'm stressed, I'm stressed, I'm stressed, I'm stressed.
Oh,
So that's even more reason to shut that off. And so it stand when someone says, I can't sit still, I can't quiet my mind. And because you teach meditation, I know because I've practiced it. It's not a matter of shutting off those thoughts, right? So
right.
we talked about that before. You don't have to
Yeah.
shut off those thoughts. Um, would you say that this just being still is as rewarding as actually being able to clear the mind, if that's even possible?
Are definite benefits to just being still. And it's an iterative process. So I mean, I can't just sit down and like clear my mind, I do in my own personal practice. I start with an invocation and kind of working with my higher self, that eternal part of who I am, and I do some breath work, and eventually through different techniques I can get to a place of stillness a lot of the time, a place of like going beyond thought. But even in any given session, it's not unusual for thoughts to pop in.
Right.
And so it's not like exactly what you're saying. It's not about rejecting or like resisting. It's not like, oh, thoughts are bad. I'm doing this wrong.
Right.
Because what happens when we get into that mode is we tighten up and we
Right.
get contracted and we're like getting judgmental. That judgment is also something that, is very helpful to overcome in general in meditation, but in
Yes.
life, it's something that holds us back. So it's really a big part of meditation, particularly in the beginning, but I mean, even, and I say beginning, meaning like months or years, it's not like just the first few days, but it's about noticing the thought, noticing that we have gotten away and we're traveling the thought train, and then choosing to come back and being in that stillness for as long as it lasts, that thought stillness, as long as the mind, we'll be quiet. We enjoy that. And then more than likely another thought or thoughts, another train's going to come. And what's sneaky about them is that we often don't notice that we've gotten on the train, so it's like,
Yes.
oh, I'm in this stillness. And we may even get into a thought train about that. Somebody may get on a thought train because they have a memory of hearing us talk about this right now. And then they're,
And then,
back to,
yeah, they're like, I'm
back to
doing
this.
it, right? I'm doing
Right.
it.
Yes. Yeah. Look at me. I'm in a thoughtless state, and it's like gone before you even had a chance to enjoy it. And that is just like how it goes. So it's like recognizing we've gotten on the train, that we have slipped onto this train, because nobody's ever there going like, okay, oh yes, here comes the thought. I'm boarding the train now, and I'm
I love
choosing to
that.
get on the thought. It's like, no, we just find ourselves on the
It's
thought train.
true.
Yeah. And it's
It's
like, well,
true.
how did that happen? I was just totally still. So it's noticing and then choosing. So it's like, okay, there's time for that the whole rest of the day. If it's important, it will come back up. I don't even need to write it down unless you're having like a breakthrough or something,
Right.
and I've had that too, where I'm like,
Right.
oh, I have to make a note of this because
Yeah.
otherwise I know I'm not going to be able to get off this thought train, or I might lose it. But it's the noticing and the coming back, and the noticing and the coming back. And you may have to do that multiple times, but it's doing that, and it's doing that with compassion, and it's doing that with acceptance, without judgment, and just knowing that every time that you recognize you've gotten on the thought train and you've come back, you're getting stronger. You're getting better at
Yeah.
identifying when it's happened.
Yeah.
And it's just going to keep getting easier to do that. So you keep gaining the more you do it, even if that's why it's important not to be like, oh my God, I've done it again. I'm terrible at this, and then coming back. Oh no, not again. I'm terrible. It's like, no, hey, I recognized I caught myself and I'm coming back. I did it. So that's
I
so
love
important.
that. I love that. The thought train, because that's what it's like. It's like the trains, the train comes by and we just jump on, and before we know it, we're at the next
Yeah.
depot. And
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That's a beautiful analogy. And so I I think you'll agree. Um, and it's okay if you don't, but I think you will. I tell my clients just showing up is half of the battle, right? So
Yeah.
just sitting down and trying, doesn't
It's a
matter if
huge
the thought
win.
train, if you're, if you jump on the thought train.
Yeah.
I love that, the thought train, because that's what it's like. And
Yeah.
before you know it, you're on a tangent, and then you realize, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be meditating.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. And,
we all do it,
just
right?
right. And building that habit, just sitting to do it, even if you get on the thought train 1,000 times in 5 minutes, you have started to build that habit, and it will
Yeah.
keep getting easier. You will be able to have longer and longer stretches. But yeah, just the doing of it every day, if you can, is so key. Absolutely.
So one of the questions that we talked about, that we would discuss, and I'm really anxious to hear your thoughts on this, because this is definitely a way for us to impact our immune systems, is how meditation affects our nervous system response. So could you talk about that a
Yeah.
little bit?
Absolutely. So within the nervous system, we, just kind of baseline info, we have the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic is like the active part of the nervous system. So that's like when we are in fight, flight, or freeze. So if we are being chased through the plains of the Serengeti, you know, that we need that sympathetic nervous system. It's what's going to engage our limbs. It's going to, the energy comes out of the organs. It moves to the muscles and to the support system to help us to be able to take action. When we have been chased and we have exerted that energy, then we kind of come back out of the sympathetic nervous system. We come into the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is our rest and restore part of the nervous system. So this is when our cells start to regenerate, when the organs get all the good stuff and they get to work properly, and the blood is flowing through to, getting like balance within the body. But when we are stressed and we're in chronic stress, we are continuously in the sympathetic nervous system because our body thinks that it has to be on the defense. It has to be ready to act. And we're not running through the Serengeti. So often we're actually not running off that chemical where it's meant to be this short-lived thing where, the body's not meant to run that way. It's not meant to survive that way, because it's meant to give you that quick hit to be able to act and take action, but then to come back into balance and to restore. So when we're in this state of stress, our body thinks that it needs to be on the defense, that it needs to act. And your body physiologically is responding in such a way. So you're not getting all that luscious energy that is circulating through all of your organs and your cells aren't going into that repair state. They're not regenerating because that's something that happens through the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, why this is important in meditation, there are many ways that our nervous system responds to meditation. Of course, if you're going to give yourself the time to rest and relax and be like in an okay feeling, then the body will start to respond in such a way where it's like, oh, we feel okay. All right, let's kick in this parasympathetic nervous system. Let's start doing some repairs. Let's start getting the good stuff to the organs and so forth. So we also in meditation, at least the way that I teach it, there's always a breath element. And the breath is closely tied to the nervous system as well. So when you're this is a quick hack for people to be able to engage your parasympathetic nervous system. Hopefully you're inspired now to get your parasympathetic more engaged. You can do quick hits throughout the day just by breathing in your tummy. So when you feel the breath moving through your tummy, that is giving a signal to your body, oh, if we're breathing down low, then everything's okay. And the parasympathetic kicks in. It is the upper shallow high breath that is associated with the sympathetic nervous system. So if we're constantly breathing up high and shallow, then we're in the sympathetic nervous system. We're not relaxed. We're engaging in that way. And that's also sending a signal to the body. So just by taking some breaths and breathing down, just by taking breaths, obviously you're breathing continuously all the time, but bringing your conscious awareness to how you're breathing down into the abdomen. And again, you don't have to be meditating for that, but through meditation, all of these processes will start to kick in once you do get into that state where your body is receiving that message that everything's okay, we're being still, let's rest, let's not sleep, but let's go into this regenerative process.
Yeah, so you've touched on a topic that I go into in a lot of detail with my clients who have chronic health conditions, because we know medical science tells us that stress causes illness. 95%, I think it's 95% of all doctor appointments or healthcare appointments, I should say, are stress related. So we live in a very stressful world. And on top of that, we've got this innate fight, flight, or freeze response that you talked about a moment ago. It's a hardwired response. It's meant to be turned on when we feel threatened or if we're endangered. But in our society, we've gotten to the point where we're constantly in fight or flight. Even a traffic jam can throw us into fight or flight, or running late out the door while we're running out the door trying to put our shoes on.
Right.
Right? So we
Yeah.
can jump in the car and get in the traffic and get to the job that we hate. And so and if we don't allow our bodies to come out of that fight or flight response, then we're actually damaging our immune system, because the body never gets the chance to do that repair work that you were talking about.
Right.
And so oftentimes, again, the work that I do with my clients can be highly emotional. And if they are in a highly emotional state, I'll ask them to do that, to just sit calmly, close their eyes, and take a couple of deep cleansing breaths. What I learned on my journey through chronic illness was that chronically ill people tend to have shallow breath.
Mhm.
And you know, we need oxygen to get to all the cells in our body, and it's a lot more challenging for that to happen if we're breathing shallow. So we want to have
Right.
those deep breaths, to help get that oxygen to all the cells, and to turn off that fight or flight, and bring us into a state of repair. And meditation can do that, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, I love
Um,
that. So I often recommend that my clients meditate, and you know, so there's three things here I want to mention, and I know that you will help clarify this for anyone who's listening. We have meditation, visualization, and being present.
mm, yeah.
What, do you mind addressing those three?
Yeah, yeah, and they go so hand in hand, and they can be used on their own. So, we've talked a lot about meditation and that being kind of this deliberate, kind of intentional sitting down, going into the stillness. Visualization is a tool that I use often in my meditation, and there are a lot of different ways that we can use this. We can use it to kind of see ourselves in a future state. So maybe we see ourselves overcoming an illness, or being on the other side of a disease, um, coming into wholeness. Like, what would that look like? What would that feel like? How would we feel? How would we? What would I mean? Let's If my arm was broken right now and I was in pain there, just seeing the bone fusing together in perfect alignment. And then, what might it feel like? And see, can we feel like that the pain would be? What if I imagined that there wasn't pain there? And see where that takes us. There are different ways that we can visualize, we can bring all those senses in, because we may be more of a feeling kinesthetic person. We may be more of a visual person. We may respond more to sound. So it may be something where we talk ourselves through it. Um, but the whole idea is to try to get ourselves into that future state and really try to get it to be as clear as it can be, and step into that. And what happens actually is we start working on the quantum level, which is beyond time and space. There's a lot of really interesting science around the
Yeah.
quantum, but you actually start to pull in that which you are visualizing. This is one of the reasons that we don't, we want to be careful about what we focus on, that we're worried about for the future, because the more we put ourselves into that, um, through worry of like, what if this happens? And we keep coming back to it. Again, we're always working on the quantum level, whether we realize it or not. So we want to be careful that we're not drawing to us things that we don't want. But through visualization, if we really try to be clear about what it is that we want, where we want to be, we end up pulling that to us. Um, So that's one way, working on the very physical. We can also use visualization just to help us to amplify that calmness that we get in meditation, where we may just visualize ourselves, on, if we're a beach person, maybe I'm on the beach. I feel the warmth of the sun. I hear the sound of the waves. I feel the sand, warm against my skin. I can, hear the breeze coming through the trees that are behind me, all of this stuff just to amplify that piece and getting more and more and more into that the visual or the experience that we may not actually be having physically. But the brain is so interesting in that it doesn't recognize the difference between what we think is happening and what is happening. There's fascinating research on that, which
Yeah.
really, you can take that further to be like, well, what is reality then? Am I just creating this reality that's in front of me because that's what I'm focusing on, it's what I'm buying into. Um, but our brain, they've done, one example of the research that they've done is, breaking up two groups of people who have similar skills on the basketball court, and having one group practice free throws for a certain amount of time, and having another group imagine, like visualize themselves shooting free throws, but never shooting them. And the percent, and then I think there was another group who just didn't do anything for that time. Like they did a crossword puzzle or something, like they did something that wasn't anything to do with basketball as a third group. And then they, after a period of time, they observed how they all did shooting free throws, and there was negligible difference between the visualization group and the actual free throw group. And of course, the people who had done nothing to do with free throws didn't make any progress at all. But the muscles, the body, the physiological effects of the body, the brain firing, the neurons that are firing in the brain, they must have been responding the same way, whether they were doing it physically or they were visualizing. This is so important in healing, because if you're sitting in a hospital bed, for instance, or you're somehow incapacitated, how amazing is it to spend your time with your body working on healing yourself, even if you don't know, quote unquote, know what you're doing, but you're involved, you're participating in the healing of your body. There are very real results of the difference between people who are actively engaging in the healing of their body and those who are just like, well, whatever the doctors say, I'll take the prescription, or I'll, whatever, and I'll just rely on my dumb body to do whatever whatever the medicine tells it to do, rather than like, oh, there's an intelligence, there's an exceptional intelligence of this vessel, this physical vessel, that you have the capability of interacting with and influencing.
Yeah. So in my practice, I recommend both visualization and meditation. Visualization is so incredibly powerful, and we have scientific proof of that, like you were saying. It goes on and on. For those who may be challenged to exercise because of your physical limitations, try visualizing that you're lifting weights or you're jogging like you used to be able to jog, anything like that. You will be surprised at how the body responds to that. As you mentioned, Kara, the body doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined. Just think about that for a moment, okay? And so a lot of the great gurus over time, the mindset gurus, especially Neville Goddard, would say the power is in the feeling. How did it feel? Now, when you were describing that walk on the beach, because the beach is one of my favorite places, I could actually feel the warmth of the sand on the bottom of my feet as you were talking. And I was starting to drift away, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm in the middle of an interview here. I need to stay focused. But
Oh.
you had me going because you talked about like feeling the breeze and the temperature, and sometimes I'll walk my clients through a visualization, and I'll ask them, what's the temperature of the air, and what time of day
Mm.
is it? Is it sunrise or sunset, or is it middle of the day? What does it feel like? And oftentimes it's challenging for people because they confuse the feeling words with the subjective words, right? So,
Mm.
but with a little bit of work, you can get there.
Yeah.
And so thank you for that warm walk on the sand. I didn't know I was going there
Well,
today.
that must have been for you because I often will, my go-to is more of a meadow. So I was like, oh, why am I going to the beach? That's
That
funny.
must have been for me.
Because I'm a Midwestern girl. So beach
Uh-huh.
is like, if I want to go to the beach, I have to go on vacation. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. All right. I loved that. Yeah, I really did feel it. Um, so I want to make sure that people know how they can reach you. So please tell us how people can get in touch with you.
Absolutely. So I have a website, which is karagoodwin.com. You can see my name there. It starts with a K. And on there, I have the meditation immersion program, which is a 21-day self-paced program. If you want to learn how to meditate, I break it down, do it at your own pace. I have another program that's an ongoing community kind of live meditations. We have regular live interactions, and then we have a community forum that has inspiration and, um, you know, things to think about, different videos. You can have prayer requests and different ways for us to be engaging outside of the live times. I have a retreat coming up at the end of August. That's going to be really beautiful. There's information on that on my website too. And then I have the meditation conversation. Teresa's going to be a guest. I think you're coming on in April, or is it later this month? Might be later this month. Anyway, you're a future guest. I'm looking forward to having
Yes,
you
I'm
on.
not sure the exact date right now, but you and I will locate that date and we'll put it in the comments section along with your website links.
Yes, and that one I don't do them live, so it will come out even after we record it. It will take a little bit of time to come out. Although who knows what's on the horizon. Between now and then, maybe I do them live. Who
Right,
knows?
right.
This has been something that's kind of brewing. But the way that I've done it the last 3.5 years, it's always been recorded. But the meditation conversation is the name of the podcast. So there are a lot of episodes out there to help people explore different areas to do with healing, with meditation, with all the kind of things that touch on meditation. So we've talked about some of them as far as like sound, um, different, you know, art that is, you know, kind of where people are kind of creating art, but through, you know, through that eternal part of themselves. Um, and just a lot of things like that. So that's another resource out there for people. And I think that is pretty much everything.
And just one more topic I'd like to touch on before we end today's presentation, and that is the conversation you and I had about with all that's happening in the world right now. Many of us are feeling the discomfort of that. And so, as an empath, I am especially sensitive to energy. And we've had global events as well as events, in our own country as well as our neighboring countries. And for some of us, if we don't keep ourselves in check, it can become very overwhelming. So would you like to add anything to that as we go through
Yeah.
these? cosmic shifts.
Exactly. Yeah, that is where my mind goes, is the cosmic element to this. So
Yeah.
planetarily, the Earth has been moving in and out of this stream of high frequency photonic light. And it's kind of, people call it different things. Um, I kind of like the term this photon belt, but it is these particles of energy that, because of the rotation of the planet and how it moves around the sun, and how our solar system then rotates as well, we kind of have been for a while moving in and out of this band of high frequency energy. And as we continue to rotate, we're spending more and more time in this photon belt. Because again, we go in and out of it, but it wasn't that long ago that we may spend, a few hours in it, a few days in it, and it's just, we are spending more and more time in it. And ultimately, and I don't remember what the actual time, it's, within a X amount of years, we will permanently be in it for, I want to say 200 years. And this is really interesting because it ties in with like yogic philosophy, where they talk about the yugas and how, we move in and out of these times, but they don't necessarily talk about the yugas in relation to this cosmic energy. So there are lots of different ways that we can see, because if you're a yogi, you may talk about it more as like the yuga ages. But
May I interrupt you for 1
yeah,
second? So you said a moment ago that it's only a matter of time where we will be in it for a long time, right? Could you
mhm.
define the in it part? Because should people be freaking out, or what? What's going on?
No, 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 no.
Okay.
Well, so it's, if you imagine like out in, I hope I'm doing justice to this because I'm not a scientist, but what I understand hearing from different sources is there is like this stream, this like current of photonic light that is in space. And so as our planet moves, we move through it. Um, it will take adjustment because it's affecting the energy that's here on this planet. And so this can be an explanation for why we might sometimes be feeling things that we may not have a known cause for. So for instance, I noticed a few weeks ago that I was feeling anxious, and it took me a few days to even recognize what that was, because there was not like a thing that happened that caused it. But I felt that I was off, and I could feel that I was like kind of out of balance, but I couldn't really put my finger on what it was. And then I was meditating and it dawned on me that it was anxiety. And I was like, oh, now I know what I'm dealing with. Yes, of course. Um, and once I could notice and witness what it was, then I was able to work with it and move it. But I didn't have like a personal cause for it necessarily. So for me, I was like, okay, I think I'm experiencing something that I'm just adjusting. Like there's new energy or like a different frequency of energy that is on this planet in this moment. And my body is kind of used to operating in a different field, and it's like, so I am adjusting to that. And the way that that's expressing for me right now is this feeling of anxiety. And just recognizing that made me feel so much better.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, what you're saying is it's going to be a little uncomfortable as we go through this shift. Could I maybe use the analogy of it's like giving birth? Once the baby gets here, the
That's a
pain
great
the pain will be a
analogy.
lot more comfortable. Would
Yeah,
that be a
because
reasonable?
yes, because also you've
Yeah.
got those waves of contractions and
I
things.
get it now. Okay, so
That's
that makes
a
a lot.
very,
So once we move into it, then things will smooth out and all of us will begin to feel better.
Yes, and we should be
Okay,
operating then at a higher level. But to birth through that, yeah, we have to go through,
perfect.
I think that there are a lot of rewards on the other side of that. Um, but it will take some adjustment, but we can all do it. We can do it. And things like the work that you're doing, Teresa, to help people to get in to make these shifts within them are going to be really, really valuable as we move into more and more of this. And because this is what it's going to be about. It's going to be about like mastering ourselves and owning ourselves and working through things that need to be cleared and blockages and things like that. That's going to be huge. So
Yeah.
the work you're doing now to help people, it will just really dovetail very nicely into where we're going.
Yeah, and your work as well. Thank you for that acknowledgement, but your work as
Oh,
well.
thank you.
And so I think we can say together what we don't want people to do is say, "What's wrong with me?"
Absolutely.
Because there's a lot going on up there planetarily. And I am not a scientist either, and I'm not an astronomer, but I read and listen a lot. And we are going through this huge shift as we move into we've been moving into the age of Aquarius, and we also know there's scientific proof that we can track dissension on this planet based on solar flares and things like that. I'm not an expert, but I've studied enough to know that what's happening up there, as this planet rotates, it affects all of us. So if that thought crosses your mind, what's wrong with me? Just know that probably nothing. It's probably
Yeah.
talk to a friend, because we're all experiencing. I have felt the anxiety personally.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's always good to know that, oh, it's not just me,
Yes.
right?
Oh my God. It's so key. And having
Yeah,
that acceptance and giving yourself that grace and giving other people grace is so key right now.
yeah,
Always, but
yeah,
now in particular.
yeah. Otherwise, it's really easy to fall right into a depression if you think it's just you, if you think
Yeah.
you're misunderstood, if you're afraid to talk about it with people. It's real easy to fall into a depression, and we certainly don't want that to
Yeah.
happen. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for all the time that you devoted to us today. And I will be sure to put all of your contact information in the description of the video. Just give me a little bit of time to get that over to my people, and they'll get that done. And gosh, I enjoyed this so much, Kara. Thank you. And
Oh,
stay on the
me
line with me
too.
when we disconnect, and we can continue our conversation.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all this work that you're doing. It's huge. I love it.
Thanks.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. And back at you, okay, so to
Oh,
speak, back at you, because your work is so important as well as we work to keep our balance on this planet.
right, right. Thank you.
Okay, goodbye, everybody. Oh, and
Bye.
if anyone has any questions or comments, please post them in the comments area, and Kara and I will keep an eye out. If I see it and she doesn't, and it's a question for her, I'll definitely make sure she gets it. All right, until next time. Bye now.
Bye.